Okay, welcome to the Citizen Government Review Committee meeting for February 19th, 2025. Tonight, we're going to start with roll call. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Jim Cow.
Here.
Connie Jacobson.
Present.
Brian Broxterman.
Here.
Champagne Lloyd. Tamara Martin.
Here.
All right, and Zachary Surratt.
Here.
Okay, perfect. All right, guys, looks like we have 5 present with Champagne Lloyd absent at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Right off the bat here, I wanted to thank Megan and Dan and probably other folks that put this Zoom or this virtual meeting together on pretty short notice. On Monday, I just thought it made a lot more sense to do it virtually than in person for this meeting, and I appreciate them going the extra mile to make this happen as smoothly as it appears to be happening now. So thank you, guys. We will dispense with any minutes as we don't have minutes of the February 5 meeting. We'll take that up at the March 5 meeting. Take a quick look at the agenda, if you would, please. And let me know if you have any requests for additions or changes to the agenda items. Most of the items on there, as you recall, were tabled from the previous meeting in February. Any need for any changes? Okay. The next item on the agenda is the review of the committee rules and procedures. And you've had plenty of time to take a look at these. Are there any observations, any thoughts any members of the committee have?
Mr. Chair, if I may interject.
Sure, Brandy, go ahead.
There really are no set rules for a committee with the city of Topeka. So I just kind of went through some of the committees that are already in existence. 2 of them already have, or they have established committee rules, and I just kind of copied those as the proposed rules of this committee. The committee members, you do not have to adopt these rules if you don't feel that they are necessary, or you simply just, you don't like them, you want to change them. You can adopt them in their entirety, or we can take some out. The committees that I took these rules from, those are committees that are comprised of council members, and those are committees that are established. Those are permanent or long-term committees. So a little bit different than this committee. And so when looking at these rules, if committee members, determine that maybe they don't want the formality of some of these rules, we can always take them out and redo them. So it's entirely up to all of you what you want to have.
Okay, and thank you for putting those together, Brandy. I think we do need to have some basic rules, but I favor fewer rules than more. And I would ask for your input and the committee's input. My thought would be to delete a couple of them, number 2, number 6, and number 10. Number 2 is about the cell phones. I use a cell phone as a health monitor, and I think that's not uncommon anymore. So my cell phone's going to stay on. And I think if there's any disruption from cell phones, we can handle that easily enough. Number 6, I didn't think was necessary because it appears to be directed towards our conferees, and we would have scheduled time for the conferees anyway. I don't think the 15 minutes is what we want to have. And number 10 seemed to me to be duplicative of number 3. So So my thoughts are to eliminate 2, 6, and 10.
May I add number 12? Delete 12. I think anyone can do that.
I agree with that too.
And Jim, I agree with those, except for number 6. I do think we need to have a time limit set out.
I'm sorry, Brian. I've already warned other people about a recent hearing loss. It's worse than normal, Brian. So
all right. So,
repeat that, please.
Yeah, I agree with everything except for number 6. I didn't have 15 minutes. I agree is not enough, but I think we do need to have a time limit in there to keep everybody on track. I propose it be at 30 minutes instead of 15.
Whatever the committee's pleasure is.
That limits the number of presentations per meeting. So, is it possible to be determined by the committee, or time limit to be determined in advance of the meeting, or is that too vague?
Well, I'm just thinking that we try to keep it fair for everybody, where that everybody's afforded the same amount of time, to where it doesn't seem like playing favorites or anything.
I think if I might add in, I think it's good that when we're asking people to come present, that we give them kind of a standard, hey, we've got 15 minutes for you. The last meeting we had, those were pretty big overviews. They both took about 30 minutes. I can't realistically foresee that any of our governing body members or any of our city staff would likewise take up 30 minutes. Honestly, I think 15 minutes is a pretty good time point. If we need to hear more from them or have more questions, we can vote to give them an extra 5 minutes on a case-by-case basis. I think at 15 minutes, that's a pretty good standard of just, we've got limited time. We're meeting for 2 hours at a time, and we've got a lot of things to hear. So I kind of like the 15 minutes. Maybe we do 20. But we want to get this happening. I like the fact that we have something in here that says our standard presentation is 15 minutes.
You read my
I'm good
mind. I was going to suggest 20 as an
Yeah, I'm good with
alternate.
20. Yeah, I'm good with 20.
Okay. Woo.
Okay, we landed on 20. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So, or any other thoughts? Then I think I'd look for a motion to approve and adopt these rules of the committee as presented by Brandy, with the exceptions of number 2, 10, and 13, and the amendment of number 6 to provide for 20 minutes instead of 15.
And Jim, that's 12, not 13.
All right. So, committee, I move that we adopt the proposed rules with the amendments that we just discussed, omitting number 2, number 10, and number 12, and modifying number 6 from 15 to 20 minutes per presenter. I so move.
Second.
I second.
Okay, just for discussion, just clarification, Connie, I thought you were talking about number 13, and you were talking about number 12. Okay, and I'm fine with that. I agreed with deleting 13, but I will also agree with number 12. Motion to dismiss is a privileged motion, non-debatable under Robert's rules. So, okay. So, Brandy, you have all that?
I do. I think we just need to take a vote.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion as submitted?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I have five voting yes, and so that means that it will carry.
The public input matter that was deferred from the last meeting. First of all, I'd like to know from you guys if there's a consensus that we need to take any exceptional measures to try to generate public input, or if we just play things out and see what happens. I note from the 2014 study that Jim Reardon chaired that there was some public input, but and I think his I think he explained to us that he thought that input came as a result of communications out of the mayor's office, newsletters, and so forth, as opposed to any particular effort by the committee itself. But what do you think? I value the public input. I think we're going to hear from the usual cast of characters, you know, people that are inside City Hall and people that deal with City Hall on a regular basis, but just Joe and Jane citizen. I think it'd be great to hear from them, but I don't know. I do not know how to go about generating that communication.
And Mr. Chair, if I might ask either Megan or even Dan if the city has a kind of a communications method that they prefer to kind of get some of this information out.
Dan, do you want to take the ringer on that? Okay.
Yes, sorry. Sorry, we're echoing 1 second. Okay. We are in the communications department creating a graphic and that we will be posting online on social media, as well as including that in the weekly report that goes out to the public every week. So we are in the process of getting that approved and getting that sent out.
That's perfect.
Is it safe to assume that this committee will use the standard communication methods that all the other committees do with the city of Topeka? It's a standard procedure?
Yes, we will promote this like we would with other ones, but we will be doing that initial push of encouraging people to sign up for public comment and that you guys are looking for more people to speak. So we'll do that initial campaign and then just promote it like we would the other committee meetings.
And is there any communication with any of our media partners about, I know that when this committee was first taking nominations for membership, there were on the, you know, WIBW and stuff. I didn't know if there was any effort to put that out there, people that watch the, you know, the evening news and things like that. Maybe that would be a good method to get it out.
Yes, we could reach out to try to get people to join the Red Couch or the Fox 43 AM show. It would be if someone from the committee would like to represent or appear on the couch to talk about what you do and why you would want public input. And I could work with whoever that is to arrange that.
What are your thoughts, committee?
If we
Personally, I just
don't
think that-
get
oh, go ahead.
feedback, if we don't get feedback from people, would it be in our best interest to try to do a hearing, like a public, where we invite the public to come down like they did before at the library?
Yeah.
In
I
person?
think just getting that information out, you know, at, you know, where are people getting their information on the city? Social media is definitely
Yeah.
a big one now, but I think that there's still a large population that's getting it from, you know, TV, from local news stations like,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
KSNT and WIBW. I just think that it opens it up to at least getting more eyeballs in front of it. Even if it doesn't mean we get a bunch of people in front of us, people understand that it's a process that's going on.
Okay.
Are we of a mind of having at least one meeting, one scheduled meeting that is set aside specifically to hear from the public?
We discussed
do
too.
that. It's too early to do that. If we called a meeting for that purpose right now, I think we'd have an empty set of chairs. So, okay.
We discussed two
Any other
meetings
thoughts about
for the
generating
public.
input?
Okay,
What about Dan's thought about having one or more members of the committee going on media? Is that attractive to anybody?
It sounds like, I don't know if you can see that Councilwoman Hiller has already put a message in the chat saying that KSNT has reached out to her and Councilman Duncan So it sounds like they already have some interest there.
I think it would be, sorry. Okay, I think it would be beneficial to select someone from the committee to represent, to be a spokesperson. So I don't know if you would like to decide who that would be.
Got any volunteers? Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
No, I'll go if nobody else wants to.
Next item on the agenda. We need to fill in the blanks for the March meetings. And I went back through the meeting, the video of the last meeting, and was a little confused. I know that March 5, we do have the mayor at 12:30. But I was puzzled as to whether or not we thought that City Manager Perez would also be available on that date. Does anyone know?
Jim, I do want to also just let you know, so currently we actually do have the city manager as well as the community engagement director, Monique Glaudet. They are both actually signed up to speak at the March 5th meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Three total.
Along with the mayor at 12:30. Okay, that's great. That fills up that spot pretty well. What about March 26th? I had mentioned at the last meeting that I favored inviting the League of Women Voters to appear, and I believe that was acceptable to everybody. And I have made a communication to them a few days ago, Monday of this week, and have not heard anything back yet. But if they were available on March 26th, would you be agreeable to plugging them in on that date?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yes.
And Zach had been pushing the representative from the Chamber of Commerce, and I think we're all in agreement. It'd be good to hear from somebody from the Greater Topeka Chamber, also on March 26th.
I can check the calendar from somebody with either the Chamber or the Greater Topeka Partnership and see who they might, could also be Go Topeka, but we can probably get at least one person to represent the organization on the 26th.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, good. And then probably at the next meeting, we should probably take a look at the April meetings and see if we can at least line up some preliminary speakers. And I think that takes us up to our conferees for tonight. And really want to express our appreciation for Councilmember Hiller and Councilmember Duncan to appear tonight. I want to warn you both that we have high expectations. We don't have a list of topics to deal with right now yet, but in talking to Jim Reardon, who you both know, at our previous meeting, Jim advised us that there wouldn't be any problem, that we would get plenty of issues raised by the two of you. So and I don't have any particular preference as to how we go forward with you all. If you want to go separately and make a presentation, and then both of you stand for questions from the committee, is that, or do you have a tag team approach lined up here?
No, I'll be honest, I wasn't exactly sure what I was supposed to do here this evening. So, but I can defer to Councilwoman Hiller first, and then we can go from there.
Okay, if that's fine. And Councilmember Hiller, just a 30-second introduction. You've got a long and storied history with the city of Topeka public service, so give us a refresher of that, would you please?
Well, I have served since 2009, so I was going to mention in my remarks, for which, by the way, based on city standards, 15 minutes is really generous. Anyway, I testified 10 years ago when the last round occurred, and like many of you have been following City Hall quite a bit, so I was aware, I paid attention the time before as well. And so I felt like I could bring a little bit of that history to you today. Though on the other hand, I'm assuming that each of you has read the report from last time and is familiar with how that process went, as well as certainly my remarks and those of others. And so if that's adequate for you, I mean, my background behind that has been involved in the nonprofit industry. I was director of housing and credit counseling, worked there for my whole career, 34 years, very active in neighborhood-based. I live in the Tennessee Town neighborhood. I chaired the Central Topeka Turnaround Team for a while, and today am involved as convener for the Topeka United, a movement that is doing the Mosaic Partner Parish program and various other events in Topeka, and the Brown v. Board Sumner Legacy Trust. So lots of community connections, if that can be of value to you, in terms of what I remember from last time. I had to look back at my testimony. 20 years ago, the issue was city-county consolidation. That was the hot button. Lots of people had lots to say. Ultimately, that did not advance. But, this process is one that I think is good. It's sort of every 10 years, whether we need it or not, we're going to have a look at this and see if we think what we're doing is good, if there are some major changes to make. And in the process of doing those hearings and reading and thinking, you come up with a lot of more specific operational things that people just bring up and so on. And so I wanted you to know that 10 years ago, the big issue really was we had a couple of mayors, not just the one at the time, that had wanted to be able to vote. And so they didn't like the separation between the structure that was there, that was a council and a mayor. And so the mayor didn't get to vote. I think maybe got to break ties. I can't remember for sure. And so there was an agenda coming from the mayor at the time, the mayors at the time, to let the mayors vote. So there was a lot of conversation on that. I was supportive about that, didn't really care. A lot of other things came up, and I wanted you to know, I can't remember if I saw it in that report or elsewhere, but the city, I actually chaired the Policy and Finance Committee shortly after that. And the city council did take the report that your predecessors put together with all the other things that your predecessor said, we're doing the big picture stuff, but all the rest of this isn't really in our domain. But we got that report and we did address those items and made changes to our council rules, and I can't remember if it was the charter as well, but we really did address all those things. And so to be comfortable in taking all that input, dealing with what's really your assignment, but not being afraid to send through the mayor's office or however the chain of command is, back to the city, the other things, so that we can consider them. I think you can, and I think we will. So just for what that's worth. For me, in terms of some input for you, it really seems like things are going okay, and that the city, the council, mayor, manager form of government is working all right. We've now had 10 years since the last changes. We're still getting used to it. It takes time to do that. And so really it seems to work well. The one drawback that I have identified, and I've checked with some people that were on the panel before and they didn't talk about it, was that by changing the council, that separation from a council and a mayor over here, so the mayor didn't vote, you got a council of 9. When we pushed that together, it brought the mayor in as part of the governing body, in which case COMA says that mayor can't talk shop with more than half of the governing body. And it was unintentional. People have different feelings about COMA, but that, it allows you, by the broader interpretations, to talk about issues, to do education, to find out what's going on, but not through meetings or verbal communication or electronic communication, or even what they call serial communication, where it would ping from one person to another. So if 3 people are already talking and then I talk to them, I'm 4. It limits the ability that I recall from before that period of time where Mayor Bunton, who was the mayor when I first was elected, would call each one of us in and talk about what he thought was important, and could also hear from us what we thought, what we were thinking, what we were going about, and was able to work in, to bring the council together, or at least to gather all of that communication for a smooth process. To me, with local government, the idea is that if people can bring up ideas, you work them the best you can, so by the time it comes to council, it's pretty well vetted, people are informed, and it goes smoothly. We have established with the city council here that if there's an issue that we think at all will be controversial, that we will put it on what we call a discussion only item first. So there's a chance for us and citizens to talk about it before we're right on the cusp of needing to make a vote. But I realized that we lost that ability for the mayor to freely communicate with everyone on the council. And I have visited with Mayor Padilla about it. I knew this was coming up and I didn't want to blindside him about it. He knows that I've observed that. But what it can do is for a mayor to feel that their hands are tied, or for someone on the council to feel like they're probably last in line, so there's no point in working with the mayor on that issue. I haven't researched it all the way, but if there was a way to separate again. So what happened is we brought the mayor in and we now have the governing body. So to get a majority and a vote, it went from 5 to 6 instead of having a 9-person council where if everyone was there, you had an uneven number of votes. And our votes aren't usually very close, so that's not really a big deal. I think that the mayor before had the opportunity to vote to break a tie. Have to double check that. Again, it's not a real visible issue, nor is the structure as well. And so I wanted to bring that point up to you as you're considering. Otherwise, it seems like everything's going well. Each of us with 9 districts has over 14,000 people that we represent. Each district is different. And so it gives us a chance to get to know our own. I represent District 1, which is like a city within a city. So I'm the one that's kind of buried, if you will. But they're different, and that's a value in terms of representation. When I was first elected in 2009, the council had been very contentious, and so the top priority for the 3 of us that were elected then was to kind of settle it down. It was it was I think the 3rd year of the city manager form of government at that point. It was new too, but it had been contentious, and so. Settling that down, one of the things we all said to ourselves and each other that has carried forward to today was we all wear 2 hats. We represent our district, and then we also represent the city as a whole. And establishing that culture in the council has worked, I think, very well. It's something that you can put in writing if you want, but it needs to be culture, and we have accomplished that. And really, as the council has changed, again, I've been on there 15 years now, and so I've seen it turns over 2 or 3 people every 2 years, and so fortunately, with the numbers that we have, it's only 2 or 3 people every 2 years, and you can kind of accommodate that in a group of 10. The rest of it seems to really be going pretty well. And the only other hiccup that I could think of was that with the city council form of government and the way any of them are chartered, we're not responsible for any administrative duties, yet we have our own council assistants that report to us. And that's been a little awkward. But we're handling that administratively. I think the current city manager is doing well with that, having assigned his administrative assistant to work with our deputy mayor on those items that have come up. One of them is obviously the supervisory role with the council staff, and the other things that we are officially assigned to do is to have a deputy mayor solicit input from all of us and appoint committee members. Council committee, as well as the mayor and the deputy mayor, are involved in. We have over 30 boards that we appoint people to. It seems to work well, though. So I really, except for that one thing about coma and the change that was unintended on that, I don't have any other suggestions. I am more than happy to answer questions, however. So, and I'm sure my colleague Spencer is as well.
Well, I'm disappointed, council member, that you don't have some prices for us to deal with. Maybe Spencer will do differently. But on the open meetings matter, the city council does have regularly scheduled study sessions, don't you? Or you have used non-action meetings?
We do not. For a number of years, what happened was that the council came early at 5:15 and had kind of study sessions or discussion sessions prior to the 6 a.m. start of the meetings. For a variety of reasons, I don't know so much about the front end, but the deal is we absolutely had to do a hard stop at 5:58, no matter where we were in that discussion item. And so the shift was made, again, this was not at your end, but on the council rules, I think, to instead have the discussion only items on the agenda, so that we took care of our action items first and let the people who showed up for a reason have their piece, get the votes done and get it out of the way. And then we schedule our discussion only items after those. And at that point, there's no limit to how much time we can spend on them. So that just made them flow a little bit better, and let people who wanted to get a bite to eat before they showed up at 6 o'clock straight from work, a chance to get something to eat.
Councilmember, do you see any merit in pushing the idea of regular study sessions, not the day of the meetings, but a couple days ahead of time? It allows for informal discussion, that communication between the mayor and council members, and still in full compliance with the Open Meetings Act.
Well, but in full compliance with the open meetings means we need to open the meeting. It has to be televised. It has to be structured. It's not informal anymore. So the discussion sessions,
in the study sessions I've been involved in, there's no participation by the public other than presence. No presentations by members of the public. It's just the right to attend and hear.
The
I have a question.
Only one I can think of that was that way was our budget retreat in December. Maybe there were others and I'm not thinking of them, but we could talk about it.
Well, I'm very pleased to hear your comments about the governing body being at ease and comfortable with the city manager form of government, because I did live through the time when the elected bodies struggled with trying to figure out how to live with and work with the appointed city manager. So
others might give you different feedback. Of course.
So can I, a couple of questions, clarification. Hasn't the council had some kind of retreat or getaway type of infrequent meetings? I know the budget were one that was at the library, but isn't there been in the past other non-budget retreats? What's the magic word I'm trying to think of?
I think retreat probably is. We've had a couple of them.
Yeah, but they're not very frequent, but they've happened, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. And then some clarification for me personally. So the coma conflict, is that the mayor is a little, restricted on like seeking out deals or cheerleading for the city, that who is in attendance turns into a coma issue, and the mayor is like kind of restricted into who and when and how and where those conversations happen. Is that what I'm getting from that?
I think Spencer has some input on that.
Okay.
So
Well,
I would
I have
defer.
a slight different interpretation of coma than Councilwoman Hiller as it relates to the mayor. The city council is an entity. The mayor is an entity under coma. Yes, we are a governing body together, but I actually believe, and I think it'd be perfectly fine if Brandy at some point or whoever wants to provide you some sort of follow-up on this. I believe that under the act, because of that separation, the mayor can talk to all 9 of us anytime he wants about a particular issue. Whereas I'm restricted to 3 people on the particular issue because of that. I believe the mayor can have that conversation with all 9. Now, whether the mayors do at times or not, that's a different issue of how they operate, right? But I think what the mayor can't do is serve as a proxy for one of us and sort of basically violate the order by taking my message to the other not 8 and say, well, Spencer wants you to do this or Karen wants you to do this. Then he's violating it because he's basically being like a living email, right? A living email.
Okay.
It's a very strange distinction and a very fine one, but I do think something over there, it does exist from that differentiation. And it can get confusing from that end, especially when we do have meetings where we say 3 of us or 4 of us can meet legally. The mayor can be there, right? Or can't he? We've had to have those conversations, and usually he can. But because now you're talking about, now we have 5 of the governing body in the same room, right? That's where we have to get.
That's the point.
It's weird, yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah, we can't really. Yeah, so when we do those little work sessions, the mayor traditionally does not participate in those. I'm talking like if staff says we want to update you on an issue, we're going to do 3 of you at a time for the public meeting. Mayor doesn't usually participate in those because we don't want there to be any issues later. So it does get a little hairy, but he can come talk to all 9 of us about one issue.
I'm not sure. And there's the line that the lawyers will look at, and it depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah.
We have the right to get information from anybody, and we have the right to get it all at the same time by many legal opinions. But if we're talking about an actionable item and trying to sway votes, which then, of course, you get the fine line between whether you're just sharing information that you knew or whether you're trying to convince somebody very affirmatively. And my worry, and I might be wrong, but I appreciate the invitation to share that with you. I worry that we've crossed the line when we brought the mayor in and made a single governing body instead of that separation that we had before. And if the issue was just that the mayor wanted to vote, revisiting the ability for the mayor to vote versus just break ties could be something to make sure we've got right.
If I may interrupt.
Yes.
So what the legal department can do is provide the committee a memo on the issue of coma and specifically the mayor's office and how coma affects the mayor's role in the governing body.
Yes, please.
Exactly.
Thank you.
That'd be appreciated.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
It helps a lot.
And the issue is that, of course, that coma was pretty new when I came on board, and what you had was a legal opinion here and a legal opinion there and a legal opinion elsewhere, and they didn't all match. The Attorney General's office didn't match. The general counsel from the League of Municipalities was in my leadership Topeka class back in 2004, and her review of that was very much that really it didn't limit very much unless you were actively trying to influence legislation, but much more cautious interpretations have said, oh, no. I mean, we get caught in the grocery store talking to one person and citizens are pointing their fingers at us, right?
I get it.
It's not that bad, but we face that all the time, you know, whether we can sit together with our colleagues at a dinner. County commissions do that. County commissioners do it, but people used to caution us that they needed to break us up and put us all over the room. And so.
Other questions for Karen? Well, Councilmember, are you able to stay online? I had some questions for both you and Spencer, if you can stay on. Okay.
Sure.
But Councilman Duncan, a few good words about yourself, please.
Yeah. So
and I know you well enough to know that you don't say anything wrong.
Yeah. So I am Councilman Duncan. I represent District 8, which is basically between 21st Street and 29th Streets, and then Gage Boulevard, kind of wherever the county line goes out that way. I'm actually one of the more symmetrical districts of the 9. There's a few little carve outs due to redistricting through the years, but mine's a little easier. It's kind of nice when I had to do yard signs. I could just do them in a giant rectangle, right? Makes it a little easier. So this is my second term, starting my 6th year on the council. I am a native Topekan. In fact, I tell people all the time, I represent the district I grew up in. I grew up right next to Crestview Park, went to McEachran Elementary. So I haven't gone too far, I guess, just traveled down a few blocks over. Yeah, that's the short version. My wife, we got an 11-year-old son, and my wife's a financial planner at a company here called Clayton Wealth Partners. And so I just plug away. I mean, I have a few thoughts if you want them now. And so I whenever we do these citizen committees, I really am very careful not to interject myself too often, because I really think the whole purpose of citizens committees is to actually hear what the citizens' thoughts are and get their input. And I want to make sure those processes are not tainted by, well, those council people were in there guiding all those conversations, right? I don't think that's healthy for the process. I know that's not what this is, but so I didn't come in here with a whole, hey, this is what you guys should do if I was on this thing, because I am really interested in what you're going to put forward and present to us. And I hope that you feel the freedom to bring forward whatever you think needs to be brought forward, right? I don't want you to feel constrained by, well, they might not like this. Don't worry about that, right? that's and I know some groups feel that way. So I always try to tell us, no, you bring us what you think is the best for what you've heard and seen and thinks best for Topeka. And then we can have that conversation from there. I will touch on, I know as I look back at what happened 10 years ago and what still gets talked about historically, especially things I've heard about in all the years I've lived in Topeka, my life is, we do talk about consolidation a lot. Obviously, that's not something the city can force. I'll be honest, I always have concerns about full-on consolidation, in part for things like, I'll give you the biggest example of where I think rubber meets the road if you consolidate it. The county elects a sheriff. The city of Topeka hires a police chief. Personally, I like that I can fire my police chief, right? I think once you get into that as an elected position, that's a much different way that things operate, and gives you less control to be able to institute some policies and the way you envision a city. So I think that's one example of several, I think, whenever consolidation gets talked about, that are very hard to rectify. We only have 2 counties in Kansas, 2 cities and counties in Kansas that have consolidated governments, and that's partly why. I do think, having said that, there are still a few areas where we could cooperate. I think many years ago, we had a cooperative planning department for partly political reasons and partly logistical. Those got separated. I don't know that that's been better. I think the city taking a look and having conversations with the county about that. I think also looking at how we can better collaborate when it comes to like our abandoned and dilapidated housing issues, right? We are a part of the county. We make up the majority of the county here in the city of Topeka. But yet we're doing a lot of resources to try to deal with some housing issues. We aren't coordinating on that, right? That should be a department or a coordinated effort between the city and the county, not just each of us doing our own thing. So I think when we talk about consolidation as it comes up, I think as a whole, it's not reasonable. That's just my person, but I think there are pieces of it that make sense. I know we always talk about as we review it, now that we're 20 plus years into whether we should have a strong mayor form or a city manager form of government. I can tell you, my day job is I am the government affairs director for the League of Kansas Municipalities, which is basically the trade association for all the cities of Kansas, the short version. So I do work with all the cities of Kansas. And I will tell you, the cities that are our size and bigger, although we're the fifth largest, fourth, we're only of the top 10, it makes a difference having a city manager form of government, because you really do need somebody in there day to day worrying about running what is a very large operation of all the nuts and bolts. And you can only trust an elected person to have the abilities to do that only so far. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't look at ways you can make sure you have a strong mayor. I actually think under our current charter, we can have a pretty strong mayor. I think the mayor actually does have a lot of authority, more than people realize. I mean, they're one of only 2 people who can dictate really what goes on an agenda. They can put forward pretty much anything they want under our charter. If they want to put something on there and run it and make us take a vote, this mayor can do it under our form of government. They're the only person that represents everybody, and I think that gives them a pretty strong voice who can be in the building every day and work collaboratively with your city manager. So I do think there's more depth there to the abilities and authority that our mayor can and could have, that's sometimes utilized and sometimes not. And again, that's just whoever you've got elected and whoever's serving in that position. I do think if we ever looked at going back to a stronger city mayor form of government, you better pay him more than $40,000 a year if you want someone who's competent to want that position to run it, right? And that's not less elected folks should get more money, but that is, I think that's got to be a key part of that. If you want to take on that kind of responsibility. I think one of the areas you could look at is how we utilize our committee structure, not our internal committee. We do have 5 council committees. And even though we don't do work sessions anymore, we do those committees. 3 of those committees meet pretty regularly, almost monthly, if not sometimes more. And then we have 2 that meet kind of as needed. So I will say we've kind of turned those into smaller versions of work sessions for very specific projects. And they meet, that's another pretty big time commitment, not just the meeting itself, but the work you've got to do to keep those meetings going and develop work product out of them. But I'm talking about our external citizens committees, of which we have many. I think there's I think if you take a look at that, I'm glad we have them. I think we do fail at times in actually utilizing the product that they give us. The recommendations that they give us, or the thoughts that they have, or even what they bring to us, I think we sometimes are a little too dismissive of. I don't know if there's a way to improve that process that forces us. I don't want to, everything can't just be, well, they said it, so we have to adopt it. But I think there's some ways to look at those external committee structures as to how they can have a little more of, feedback into the system of what we're trying to do with that citizen input. Especially groups like our HRC, our Human Relations Council, which looks over some pretty important things, including some police department issues and really serious community things. Our ADA board that looks over some disability issues. So, I think that's something that's worth looking at, is how we can improve that back and forth. The last thing I'll say is, and this is a much bigger one, and I doubt it'll really ever happen. It comes back and forth, and I'm not sure where I stand some days, but we have 9 districts. There have been talks through the years as to whether that's too many districts as opposed to having some at-large positions as opposed to districts. Because again, you've got one person, that's the mayor, who represents, we all represent the whole city. I do think right now every person will tell you that, yes, I have a district and I'm here to sort of take care of the people there, and I will absolutely advocate at times to fix my road and not theirs because that's my district. Get that money over here. But there are others who have concerns that maybe sometimes if you had a couple of at-large positions, that then they would have to, get the whole city buy-in, and they would represent everybody in those discussions. And so that's something people talk to me about. I don't think we have, I shouldn't say this, there's probably one, because there's 625 cities in Kansas. I think the majority of our cities, nearly all, are either districts or all at large. I don't think there's many that have, if any, that have a district structure plus some at large structure. But That's probably just because once those things are in place, it's really hard to change it, because then you just, well, who loses a district? Who becomes an at-large? How do you do that transition? But that's something that comes up. Citizens ask me about that every once in a while. So I thought I'd throw that at you. Is not necessarily a recommendation from me, but something I bet you may hear from people about is, whether we should have some at-large spots along with our district. So those are some things I know come up often that you can contemplate, and you may talk about or hear from people as you go through the process over the next several months. And then I'm happy to answer whatever question you want to ask.
Spencer, the last topic you mentioned, let me start the questioning on that one. We did note in the earlier committees, the 2014 committee, specifically, that a lot of discussion about at-large versus district representation on the council. It does seem to me that it's working well, the system you have right now. We may hear otherwise from folks as we go forward, but the one thing that I'd look for as evidence that a district representation is not working would be where you have the local concerns of one or two districts become they overwhelm the larger community interest, and that does happen in cities. I don't think it's happening here now, but I'd like to get confirmation from you guys as to that. Let me restate it, that where it becomes each district is a little fiefdom, and I'll take care of mine, you take care of yours, and we won't hurt each other, and regardless of what the larger public interest is. Did that make sense?
I'll just real quick say, and again, it's going to depend on who's elected, right? But I can say in the 6 years I've been on this council, yes, there are moments of that fiefdom, because again, when I needed Urish Road repaved, I fought really hard to make sure, because I got people screaming at me about Urish Road, right? Even though I know there's some roads in North Topeka that really also need it. And you have to it depends on who you are. You have to find that balance of when you want to step up and make your case versus when it's important to advocate for the other side of town, because we're all one collective, right? And I will say, in my 6 years, I don't have many examples where I'm like, oh, that jerk really only fights for their side and only their side. And, and if this was a Lincoln Douglas debate, I could probably argue both sides for the pros and cons of this. I will say, in Topeka's case, which is, I think, a positive for us, we actually have one of the most diverse councils in the state of Kansas. And I know that from working, and that includes, if I look at Wichita or Wyandotte County, we really are. We're very even in a lot of the quote unquote categories, right? That matter and really bring a voice of the different people across Kansas. And so if that's part of what's important, and I think it is, we're meeting that right now. And so I think it shows that you may not, there was a lawsuit in Dodge City, they're all at large. And there was some concern about how they've got a community down there that's large Hispanic community, but not really any representation on the council. And it was, and that's still, I think, working itself through the courts. But that's the other example of, at larges really let the same group elect the same people over and over and shut out those voices. So this system may work. Those are some examples of where the system works. But again, I'm sure there are also other examples that show you, to your point, that at large sort of makes a few people fight for everybody instead of creating those fiefdoms. But I can honestly say, in the 6 years I've been here, I haven't seen a lot of that. And the times I have, it's been warranted. Hey, don't forget about my community, because you are. And that's what they're there for, remind us of.
It's one thing to have that happen episodically, as opposed to being the way of doing business. And what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say, is it's not the way that the city council conducts business on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
In a way, if I can throw in, I think it's kind of healthy. For instance, I represent downtown. So I've got the Polk Quincy Viaduct, for instance, the whole interstate reconstruction going through my district only.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Huge. No, it's a federal unfunded mandate, but we can talk about that later. Convincing people to fight for the money for us. But
Yeah.
downtown is also thought of as what everybody's supposed to fight for. Yet on the other hand, I represent it, and so the issues of parking and businesses and what's the relationship between downtown Topeka Inc. and the city when it has to do with fixing the streets and the sidewalks and the streetscape. It's a push pull. It's normal. It's natural. So to have, there are times when when we've had issues about the parking meters, for instance, where somebody knows somebody who owns some restaurant comes winging into my downtown and, talking about either not having meters or bagging them or whatever it's going to be. But there's some push pull, but it's healthy. We all need to own the downtown at the same time. I've got some priority responsibilities for them because it is in District 1. We've got issues of homeless camps, for instance, which particularly Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala from District 2, because they're camping on the river and they're camping close to people, is very, very concerned about. Yet it turns out that when we end up talking about it, there's folks camping down at 37th in Kansas, and they're camping on the Shunga Trail in District 6 and District 8. And they're camping out behind Denny's on Wanamaker at District 9. And so all of a sudden, something that might seem to be just one district's problem is actually something that all sorts of people are facing. I'm looking at Champaign over here. Champaign was up at the rescue mission for a long time, and we appreciated that. And anyway, so, if you're involved in, supporting the rescue mission, it's in District 2. Homeless folks are all over the place. And so we end up crossing over back and forth with who knows somebody who's on a board, where it's happening in their district and so on. And again, at least for the moment, meaning for the last, I would say, since we created the council manager form of government, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It does seem that natural, it is a tension sometimes, of course. But sometimes it's, don't you care? Just because you're representing X, but that's natural, and it just seems to work.
I saw that Champagne posted a question. Can I answer that?
And sir, and Karen, about the city manager thing, I have a question about that. It's working. I get that. That's the most, most people will say it's working. It seems like there's like a high turnover for like nobody stays, and they make way more than y'all. So I'm just like, what y'all down there doing to these city managers where they're not staying?
Well, yeah, start with us. Dealing with 10 bosses has to be, and I tell them this all the time. I'm sorry, we're 10 different people, and you gotta manage us all. I will say this, and Karen obviously has a few more years than I do. She had a little more consistency to some degree. I will tell you the average lifespan of a city manager in a city our size is about 5 to 7 years. So anyone who says, oh, they're going to be here 15, 20 years, that happens, but it is a rarity. Partly because they want to move up a city our size, they may get a better opportunity to go to a much bigger city. Partly it's just general burnout from being in one place and it's time for a change. So that's the first expectation I'll set. I will say my perspective is totally skewed by what's occurred. I'm on my 5th city manager. I did 5 city managers in 5 years as I enter year 6. Now, there's some really good reasons for that, right? We had Brent Trout. He left, went to North Carolina, so we brought in an interim. So that's just going to be an interim. That's not consistent anyway. We made a hire. We messed that up. Now, we did the right thing, and we corrected that as soon as we realized that needed corrected. You got 2 ways when you make those mistakes. You either correct them real quick, or you double down and you try to power through. And I think we made the right call. But that was there you go. There's my 3rd city manager. So then again, we bring in an interim. And we get through that interim, and he did a really good job, to be honest, of righting some issues we had. And, he had a lot of years of experience. So for me, I feel like now I'm like, okay, hired this guy, Robert. I think he's going to be all right. I really would like him to be that next 5 to 7 year guy for the city of Topeka to provide that consistency and keep us in the right direction. So it's really hard for me to answer your question because I haven't had the consistency as in my years on the council of even having a year. I don't even have one of these people for a year, really. But to your point, so that's why I think in what I see, and so what I lean on then is my history, my current recent job of being able to see how it's working in other cities. And I lean to that and say, that's what we're trying to do. It's working there. It can work. Thank God I can see there's a path. Please let us get this one right here in Topeka. So I think that's been part of the issue. So I do think the last 5 years have skewed it a little bit, but rightfully so. It's very frustrating to have 5 city managers in 5 years. I too would be like, get rid of the whole damn system, people.
And if it's my turn to chime in, I've been on there longer. The very first city manager was in place in his 3rd year when I first came on board. So I've been through all of them. So I'm 12 or something, Spencer. Anyway, I think, and I don't say this negatively, but it's very interesting to see what a citizen government really is all about. If you have people that haven't done hiring and people that have, people that want to just get her done, people that want to spend some time, what seems like is that the city councils, since we changed to that form, have just, it's hard to look beyond just where you are. And especially if you haven't had that long-term city manager ever in your city to say, what were the character and qualifications of that individual? How did it work? Because you've never done it, and we still haven't had that long-term person. I mean, I think it matters, because each time I can go back, and each time that council has hired, it's been for a good reason. They chose that person for a good reason. But what we really need, we in Topeka, it's sort of like I align it with being a teenager. You're not a kid and you're not grown. We're a middle-sized city. We're not small, but we're not big. But what we have is big city issues and a small town flavor. And so balancing that is a challenge. And so one of the things people want, like with downtown, their vision is a big city downtown. But for a good chunk of people that have very intentionally been born and raised and never gone anyplace, they don't know what that looks like in terms of planning, development, redevelopment, parking, all those things. People aren't familiar with. They haven't lived someplace else, and further, weren't interested in cities, and things like that, so that you kind of understood it a little bit better, knew what to look for, knew what questions to ask, things like that. So I think we're still growing into that, truthfully. That we've got Robert now, part of the conversation was, we need somebody from a bigger city than Topeka, and he's worked in big cities. And so he's got that experience. Our police chief as well, look at bigger city, but also all the various initiatives that cities have. So we're getting better at it, I think, as we take that time. But I have, because I've been involved in that hiring process too, that, a city our size, maybe of almost any size, will hire a consultant to help them. Well, it depends on that individual and that company, how much affirmatively they help you, how much the council reaches out for some guidance and some education, how much that particular search person or search firm feels like they can reach out and educate. I've seen them handle us or the council very differently. Your results are different when that happens. And so that's a really good question, because we really need somebody who's experienced in running and doing all those things, ideally for the salaries that we pay and we're now offering and so on. But there is a challenge with that citizen government to know what to ask and how to look. Hopefully that helps. I'm not sure there's any way to fix it except to keep on track and eventually get to where you've had that stability. I mean, even to the point where at one point, and I won't name any names, I'm like, no, I want somebody who's going to be here for 10 years or the whole rest of their career. And, you know, internally having somebody else go, oh no, they don't stay more than 3 years. You know, you just
On the
work on it
subject of
with
city-
your partners and your team.
For both of you, on the subject of city manager and the manager form of government, at a previous meeting, a local government expert, we had conversation about how the interplay between elected officials and the appointed city manager and members of the public. And part of my question is, when either of you would you get a call from a constituent about that pothole on my street? How do you typically respond to that, or the barking dog, or what have you? I mean, does that result in a phone call to the city manager's office, or do you tell the constituent to contact the city manager's office?
Well, I'm waiting for Spencer, but I'll go. It depends on the council person. It depends on how much you know. It depends on the city manager. We've had city managers that say, I want all calls to go through me, and only, you know, little bit by little bit will allow us, will say that we can call department heads, that they want everything to go all the way up to the top and go down. Others are very comfortable in us contacting folks directly. I go back to tenant, landlord, and home buyer and credit counseling. So I'm a help people help themselves person. My goal is that a citizen ought to be able to come and do it for themselves. And so my first reaction with my constituents is, let me tell you how to do it. You give them a call and I got your back. Let me know how it goes. Unless they really aren't comfortable. All of us will advocate for our constituents. In my experience amongst the council here in Topeka anyway, it depends on who the person is, whether they always, you know, just routinely do a deep dive straight into whatever the department is and whatever the issue is, and tell the staff that they want them to hop in the car and go meet them someplace. And then others of us who go more through the channels and try not to take their time. At the same time, when you've got a city manager that wants it to go through them all the time, they can't handle that. And so it's problematic if they really want everything to go from the top down. And we generally have been able to work out, you know, at least mid-level communications. My experience is they're each different, and maybe that's just how this form of government goes.
But as an elected official, you try to complete the loop.
Oh,
somebody
absolutely.
calls you up, and then you try to do the follow-up and see if they're satisfied with what the city's done or going to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, two things to that, and Karen hinted at. I mean, you're going to be the kind of council person you want to be, right? And I always tell people when someone says, "Well, why doesn't a council?" I said, "Look, I can only be me. I can only represent myself. How other people want to represent their districts is totally between them and the district they live in, and that needs to be addressed with them." So, and I think a lot of us do a good job, but I mean, just more conceptually, you can put in as much time or care about how many emails you want to respond to or not. That really is a personal choice, and that's going to come to roost eventually when it's time to get reelected or have those tough conversations. I think the interesting thing that shouldn't be overlooked and just reminded to you folks as you look at this stuff is I employ one person as a city council member, and that's the city manager. Right now, obviously, I'm in charge of the budget and the employment of everybody who works for the city, but I have authority over one person. Beyond that, the city manager has the authority over everybody else. Now, if I'm disappointed in the performance of somebody or I'm having issues with the department head, it's absolutely my responsibility to go to my city manager and have that conversation and say, look, we got a problem from my perspective with so-and-so. Let's talk it out. I need you to address it. And if you choose not to, that's going to reflect on your employment and how I handle my one employee, right? I think what gets difficult sometimes is, and I have this issue with lots of council members across the state, I have a whole spiel I give on this, is I don't get to go in and walk into the legal department or the planning department and say, all right, I'm the council person, do what I say today. I don't, in fact, I shouldn't. And in fact, HR applies to me too. right? And we do have to be careful of finding that balance when we have those concerns as, okay, can I contact this person, or do I need to go through the city manager? Or I think right now we've established a pretty good policy that department heads don't mind us contacting them directly and including them in that loop, so the city manager doesn't have to go through everything. But when you get past that level, I need to have that conversation with them before I go to the next person. Because otherwise, then you do put employees in a position of saying, look, I've been told by my boss to do this, but I got these council people on me. Who do I listen to? They need to know you listen to your boss, and then your boss can come yell at me or the city, right? That's hard, though. To your point, when citizens sometimes wonder, why is this taking so long? I have to explain, I'm going to solve your problem, but I got to go through the chain. It's going to take a few days before I can get to it, and I don't know that that's a change that should be made in our charter or as you look at this, but I think it's important for you to guys remember that as you go through as to sort of how the chain of command works as we work through these issues.
Yeah, to clarify or just piggyback on that, our charter is pretty clear that the city manager is responsible for everything. It gives the city manager the authority to decide to delegate at whatever level he or she wants, which is kind of some of the examples that we just gave you. Correspondingly, though, we all as council members have the right to ask for information from anyone. Now, how we handle that may vary, right? But that way, it shouldn't cut us off of at least finding out who to call, for instance, or who to refer somebody to, or what a statute says, or where we are with a program and whether there's any money available for X or Y. We're allowed to ask for information, but we're not authorized to give any orders to staff. And that I think works pretty well. Again, people on the council have different personas about that and what they want to ask for and how they ask for it and so on. But Spencer's right. I mean, that's in place so that, and I hadn't thought about it at first, but I learned about it, in time after being on the council, that because I don't feel like a big shot, right? But if somebody thinks I am, and so I've called and asked for something, they're like, it's a city council person, I've got to do this or that. And I think we've mastered that balance pretty well in the city. Where it runs into a little stuff is asking for legal assistance, because we've got the right to ask for that, whether the city manager is interested in us having it or not. And so there can be some push-pull. I think we're in a good place right now, but there have been times where there's been a little push-pull about that, or, like a mayor in the past, for instance, who wanted to be able to have legal assistance and draft ordinances and so on. And the city manager at the time wasn't letting that happen. So, this push-pull of whether, when people have been involved in the Kansas legislature and they're used to having legislative research and anything they want, they can get all the time. And then they switch into city and we just don't have as much staff and so on. It's not the same, but it's working pretty well. Again, that's kind of a push-pull, you could say. Certainly the city council should not have to go get outside counsel if they've got a question about anything in city government, including their city manager. But again, I'll speak for me, but I think we're in a pretty good place right now. I've seen that push-pull go on, and it is something to be careful of.
We did make that one change to our charter. The city attorney now cannot be removed without agreement between the city manager and the governing body.
Yes.
And that actually came out of issues we had with the city manager that we let go, and some threats of, well, if they don't like the advice they're getting from the legal, they'll just fire them and find the lawyer, right? Who will. Yeah. And we wanted to give, that attorney piece is critically important for both sides. But we don't want to put any city attorney in the position of having to pick a side to keep their job, or, look, a good attorney is going to do what they have to, job be damned, right? But you want them to have that assurance that the city manager can't just get upset one day without going to the governing body and saying, we got a legitimate problem, versus, I don't like the advice they're giving me anymore. And it's because they're on your side, not mine. They're out of here, right? So I guess that's the one other position we we gave ourselves some a direct authority over as
Mhm.
relates to hiring.
Is that the only time that happens? Is it just the city attorney? It's like if the, the new, I don't know if it's a deputy or assistant city manager, but would those also have to go through council as well, or any department heads in specific, or is it just the city attorney?
Nope, they can make that decision immediately. Now, the good city managers will give us a heads up prior, unless it's an emergency situation, like if I don't get them out of the building right now, it's all gonna blow. The good city managers will come to you before and say, we got a situation, I'm gonna take these steps, but then once you get caught off guard, here's my thought process, this department head needs to go, right? Obviously, they're not gonna come to us on every position in the city or but on those executive level, yeah. But if they don't, then obviously we can argue with them as their bosses again about how they've handled it. But the good ones will at least give a heads up. But no, under our charter, they can make that decision on the spot if they want to.
As we have matured in this form of government, one of the things that they've figured out, because a lot of our city managers, given the size of our city and so on, have been new at it too. We've been new at it, but so have they. So, maturing all of that is realizing that if anything goes wrong, it's the elected officials that get absolutely slammed about it. And so to be thoughtful of us, because it's not just if it's a department head. I mean, if somebody, did something unseemly in some bar and it might blow up, they'll give us a heads up so that we're or a weather alert or something that could cause a lot of stress for citizens, where the citizens were likely to turn around and ask us, either because it's the weekend or the holiday or because it's scary. That's part of that fine tuning of the quality that you're looking for in city management and in a manager that understands those things. Because the more that they do, the smoother it all runs for everybody. But I don't know that you can totally build that in on a policy writing.
I didn't know if you guys expected that when you hired the city manager, that we expect you to let us know on those higher levels, the department heads, the deputy manager and things like that. But I like the way that the system works now. I've seen it in action now, especially with Robert taking the position. I think that he's got an idea how to build a good team, and also I assume building a good rapport with city council as well as community. So I've valued that.
Well, and to your point, Zach, when he's hired the department heads, we were invited, for instance, for the police chief, again, that's just the level of a city manager where you're looking for somebody who understands how important that is to the community. And so we'll reach out. You can't really legislate that exactly, but you look for it when you're hiring.
Have there ever been any conversations about maybe in the charter doing and I think that in my mind, it's because it's a different kind of position like the city attorney, where the police chief is hired not by the city manager, but by the city council, and kind of creating that they fall under kind of a different category, or public safety or anything like that, or just getting more council input on some of those more public heavy hitting, department heads, without getting too into the weeds, I guess.
Well, again, it's a level of trust and expectation when you make that hire. So when we hired the city manager, we did say, well, it's absolutely your authority. We're telling you we'd like you to at least run it by us before you make those big hires. So, and then I will honestly tell you, Robert looked at us and said, I want to hire Chris Vallejo as the next police chief. But if you guys tell me no, you tell me now, and if you do tell me no, then I absolutely will go home tonight and really consider whether this is who I'm going to hire, because I understand I have objections from the majority of my governing body. And so, and that's a perfect example of where he recognized he could have just hired it and told us I hired him, but he looked at us and said, unless you have let's talk it out right now. And so, yeah. And I think if you get to the point where the city manager is not doing that and you've set that expectation, that's when it's time to get a new city manager.
But again, I don't know that you can legislate that per se. It's building that culture in the community that then this is how we do things. You know, of course, we'd had the Police and Community Special Committee for 18 months, not long before. There were issues in Topeka and all over the country, and remain, you know, particularly sensitive about policing. And so you look for somebody who's going to be sensitive to that in general, who's knowledgeable, and that who will then look at the best steps. And so there was public engagement in hiring. I think we have, at least in the 15, almost 16 years I've been on, when there's been the hiring of a police chief, we've invited the public each time. And that we don't do that with every department head, but because that particular position is so, you know, everything about that department is so engaged with the public overall in many dimensions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I can understand that. I have another question, but I want to make sure that other people get a chance to ask questions, so I'll leave it to others to ask a question before I jump back in. Okay, I'm
Go
going
ahead,
to jump
Zach.
back in. Yeah. My other question is more about the council itself. I know that we've had some discussion in the past about, you know, the mayor serves, you know, the same year term, the 4-year term, and those that serve on the odd numbered districts would have to give up their seat to run for mayor versus the even number, and how unfair or fair that is. You know, since I've been on the committee here, I've done research not only with cities in Kansas, but also cities our size across the Midwest, and researched how their committee or their city councils or city commissions kind of operate. And I noticed a lot of them were the city manager or a council manager form. One thing that kind of sparked mine is that their term limits are different. So a mayor might be at large, but they serve a longer term than a city council person might. So some of them are like, you know, we've got 9 city council members in the governing body, and 4 of them serve, you know, 4 years, and then another year there's another 4 that cycle in. Any thoughts or feedback from you guys, especially in your experience, changing how those turn out? Maybe we do like a 9 council members and 3 of them are for election each year, so it's just cycles of 3. So city council members would serve 3-year terms, shorter than the mayor, and it just kind of changes that way. Or any thought about changing the term limits? Do you think that it works now? Anything like that? Just kind of general feedback there.
I'll take that one to start, and Spencer may have some thoughts. I really like the 4-year terms. I didn't know what to think about it at first, except, ooh, that's a long time. But what happens naturally with the offset of 5 1 year and 2 years later, the other 4. So you've got 2 years in between elections. What happens is then at each election, you probably turn over 2 positions, 1 to 3, couple positions. Think about it when you've started a new job or whatever you've done. It takes you 6 months to get your legs under you. Okay, so the second 6 months, you're starting to actually function. You kind of got the drill, you know where the water fountain is, and and so then you go into that second year, and by 6 months, it's election time for the other people. So you only have 6 to 12 months where everybody has worked together everybody's got their legs under them and everybody's worked together before you upset the fruit basket again. And at least with the 4-year terms, you do have that time where you've built that team, you know each other, you know how you're going to function, and you get to function together for 18. I mean, really, you do that through the election, right? So for 18 months together as a team before it changes again. And personally, watching it go and flow, I think that's as good as it gets to be able to get people, as one of my staff used to say, grooved in, and you know, you get to know people's personalities, you get to to figure out what they know and what they don't, and they become more comfortable with what they know and what they don't and begin to learn. I mean, I was one of the people who, because of all my entire career, was at City Hall all the time in community as well as my job. I probably knew as much or more about how City Hall functioned than anybody who got elected. And I knew enough to know that there was at least as much I didn't know, and I was right. You know, there's just a lot with all the departments, all the procedures, all of the community things that, you know, we all get 2 or 3 invitations a week on the average. And sometimes there's that many on a day of things people want us to do out in the community as well. And just figuring out, you know, what your lane is and what you're going to do and who to ask, and, you know, whether you have to go through the city manager or whether you can just call up the clerk in the office that you're talking about. That all takes time to do a good job, or to know who to hand off most of the things to. So personally, I think those rotating 4-year terms are good. Now let Spencer say what he thinks.
Yeah, I think 4 years is good in the local realm. I've never thought about it as tiering it differently, except I've thought about it the other way. So my guess is part of the reason they don't do 3, 3, and 3 is because elections are expensive, right? I mean, that's just a very practical reason. It costs a lot of money to do elections. I've always wondered, I'm sure the reason we don't do all 9 seats the same cycle has a variety of reasons. They think it's too much at once. They wanted it to be tiered. I honestly I don't know if there's any way to, why the history of that is. I'm kind of interested by it. I have always thought if everybody was up, if you did the mayor in the off year, but you did all 9 council persons at the same time, I've always wondered if that would boost turnout, because then you'd have the entire city talking about the election as opposed to carving out these districts and people trying to figure, is it this year? Is it my person? Is it not my person? You know, whereas if it's like, yes, they're all up for re-election this year, and that engages everybody in the city knows, I need to go vote. I should pay attention. It's election year. Again, I don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea, but I have thought about it that way in terms of just strictly the turnout issue, because let's be honest, I think the average turnout is less than 13%. I mean, if you took the average, in some cases lower than that, but I mean, I think that's the average. I remember the first year I ran on council, we actually had an incredibly high turnout for the district. It was one of the higher, I think I said, in like 20 or 30 years, and it was 20% or 21%. And I'm like, that's the highest in 20 or 30 years? Oh my Lord, right? You know, because we've each got about 9,000-ish or so registered voters, give or take, in our districts. And so, yeah, so I have always wondered about that. And of course, for a while, I think, you know, as you know, they changed the elections from spring, the legislature mandated to fall. And I think that threw people off for 1 or 2 election cycles. But I think that's far enough in the past now. Everybody knows the elections are in August and November, even local ones. So I don't know. I haven't thought about the stagger differently, but I have thought about, what if they were all at the same time? What would that look like?
Yeah, and well, here, Councilwoman Heller can go.
I just think it would be chaos. And, you know, the way the rhythm works right now, so that you really have that first 6 months for just a couple of new people, and then you can settle in, and now this is my bias, and just work. But both for the citizens as well as for that city manager to have to have that stability in the council, and the ability to change a couple seats every other year, and then get those folks worked in and achieve whatever that new normal is for that group. Or even if you've got a firebrand or you've got whatever, at least everybody knows it, and you know, the idea is good government, and having our city really work well. And I don't think, I've thought about the you know, do you put the mayor on with the other 5? So you got 6 one time and 4 another time. I don't know that it matters. I'm not sure there's a perfect way to do it. And at least that way, you know, a lot of times we so far have had somebody who was already an elected official choose to move up. And at least it's sort of orderly, whether you have to give up your seat or not. And if you don't know it, a lot of people that have served, they continue to keep an eye out, and it's nice to know that they're out there. And so just being the elected official isn't everything that it takes to have a good city either. So it's not the end of the world to have to make that decision necessarily.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
that's
and I just kind of bring it
Karen's
up as,
opinion.
people are, I had a meeting earlier today with a gal in Manhattan who's starting, it's called the Transparent Campaign Initiative, and it's kind of geared towards more young professionals in Kansas communities about getting election resources out and how to drive up turnout for local municipal elections and things like that. And we were just comparing Manhattan, Topeka's forms of government. And when I tried to explain to her how ours were staggered and how our mayor was an at-large on the governing body, it confused her. And then I know that Manhattan's is they elect their mayor internally from their city commission, and it's smaller than ours. And so each, and Spencer knows this as well, that each municipality operates a little differently. And so it can be kind of confusing. And I know that when we've got these off-year elections for things like city council, people just get confused. They have no idea if it's their year. And when we talk about good governance, in my mind, it comes from the general population. And that's where it starts. And so I just, I again was researching these things. The last thing that I've got is maybe a little quicker, but do we feel like the pay scale for both our city council and our mayor are reasonable and yet drives people to want to do that? Because you just alluded to it, this is supposed to be part-time jobs that pay $20,000 to $40,000 a year. And I know for a fact that all of you, all 10 of the governing body, are putting in more than what's probably worth a part-time job. So do we feel that it's fair, and do we think that we could drive more diverse populations to run for local office if it were higher?
Well, this is not a landmine question or anything. My goodness. All right, let's see how I can sidestep this one. No, actually, I really do think there's two very legitimate philosophies on it. And I think you saw the legislature have this conversation last year when they raised their pay this year, right? There's an argument to be made. We don't have any plumbers in the legislature, right? And that's because how do you give up a lot of this time, take away from your day job? Now it's a little different because their commitment is every day when they're up there. But I think I think it's really a philosophical conversation at some point. Yes, if you want certain people to be able to dedicate a reasonable amount of time, then the debate is, does it help to pay more? And then are you get, do you get what you pay for? All right. To some degree too. Right. I mean, there's that. I think it's tough. And I want to be very clear. I want to say this. This is not a negative to me. I am not asking for sympathy. This is not a complaint. I don't make money. We get paid $20,000. I pay for everything I do. So when I go to an event, I buy a ticket. It's not tax dollars. When I went on the inner city visit, it was my money that bought okay. Again, this is not me complaining, right? But there is a cost. I don't think people realize that if you want me to be an active council person and participate in certain things and be a part of it, it costs to do that to best represent that. And I'm in a position where I can take that $20,000 and it all kind of goes towards those things. And that's fine. I don't want the taxpayers to pick up that bill. But that's a consideration when you ask people, why don't you run? It's not just a time commitment. It's, man, is it going to cost me money to do this and to do that, to participate in these things and be a better member of the community? So yes, that's true. Do I think if you paid more, you get some different people on some of these? I think so. Am I sitting here and saying we should be paid? No, because we're supposed to be a citizen city council. And that's part of it. I can tell you right now, lots of city councils across this state who are smaller than us obviously pay nothing. Some cities that might surprise you, and they meet 3 times a month and they do a lot of work and they don't get a nickel. Others pay $20 a meeting. So truthfully, we're blessed on the higher end side of that across the state, and I ain't going to complain about it. And I mean that sincerely. But I do think it's an honest philosophical discussion about what does it mean if you pay a different rate.
I have a question, if I might, that's a total change of subject here. And it may or may not pertain directly to what our work is, but I'm just kind of like to know what your thoughts are. We are living in unusual times. If the federal government keeps devolving and unwinding, I don't know how many dollars that the city of Topeka receives through various federal programs and grants. I guess my question boils down to, is the city of Topeka doing anything proactively or anticipating having to take measures to make up for shortfalls in infrastructure funding, mental health, social services, law enforcement, dollars that had previously come from the federal government and may not be anymore. And furthermore, money that comes from the feds to the state, and the state very unlikely willing to replace those dollars that get sent down to the county and city level. Is the city wrestling with? I know that the National League of Cities has put out a number of documents, and Spencer, you've probably seen some of those. Telling people be prepared, be proactive, telling your cities to be proactive, protecting the public interest with the demise of federally funded programs. So what have you? What are you guys going to do? Anything?
So yes, when the first executive order was signed and the kind of there was an immediate shut off, our staff went into quick action and started evaluating every federal dollar we get, what the program was, what the impact would be. So they've done that initial assessment. The tap is back open right now. So we haven't had to then truthfully worry about it yet as to what. Having said that, I know that staff is looking at, if it happens again, what the impact of that's going to be. And then truthfully, at this point, there's only one option. And it's come back to us as a governing body and say, we either need to stop this program, or do you think we can find dollars to continue fund it locally until we can lean on the state, or go talk to our congressional reps and figure out what the heck's the future is. I mean, I honestly think that's our only course of action at this point. It's not like we can scream and yell all we want. It's not going to magically make the check suddenly come in from the federal government, if that's an issue. So, but I can tell you staff has done that evaluation of what that would look like. And it's a lot of money. I mean, it's millions of dollars, particularly as it relates to our housing, unsheltered issues, but housing, and to your point, mental health programs. I mean, a lot of those dollars are very directly going to the people. Good news sort of is that a lot of the infrastructure dollars we get flow through the state first, and the state gets allocated to us. But obviously, if the state stops getting those monies, we're in trouble. But right now, a lot of that money is coming from the state. So maybe they could pick up the shortfall. Ha ha ha.
Well, the pressure has been greater from the state actually wanting us to be revenue neutral in a time when costs have exploded, and challenging us to somehow do the same or more with a net of less money. And they broker, some of the federal money that's coming here to Kansas as well. At the same time, I guess it's a natural push-pull, but still that's been a much more immediate whoa. We're all dealing with homelessness, and they want us to take care of it, but somehow do it for free. And yet, working with them to prioritize if they've got more money for mental health services and more for affordable housing that could help us, as a pass through. And so whether that's coming straight from the state, but a lot of that pings off whether federal money is coming to them, or either for that particular purpose or something else, such that they're not feeling like they've got to raid the Bank of KDOT, as we used to call it, when times are tight, that we can continue fixing roads. And, all these moving parts are related to one another, depending on, where there's a tightening or a inflation of costs and things like that. Back to the time, just real quickly on that prior question, I think our challenge, again, maybe it's just a natural push-pull, is, is to work with city manager and the issues that we have so that we don't need to spend as much time as we have been lately for dollars. So
Question on some of these issues, there's legal challenges and those will have to play out as well. Is it too soon to tell on some of this stuff? Anyway,
Yeah.
it seems
yeah.
like it,
Yes
because
is
it's
the
by the
short
day.
answer.
Yeah. Okay. So, should we move on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do we
only
need to
got-
do next?
Okay, so I did notice that we did forget to go over item 5. That was for setting the meeting dates for April
Yes.
and May. So if we want to go over that, I think that would be great.
I do not disagree.
I think we should thank our council members for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you for
Appreciate
your
it.
input.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much.
Valuable.
both.
Valuable.
Karen Spencer, thank you very much for your help. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I think I can speak for both of us. There's Spencer's on, you're welcome to call us back if there's something else we can help you with, either by an email or by showing up.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you for your work.
We have
So-
agenda item number 7, which is general public comment. Do
We need to do
have
5
any?
first.
We need to do
5
5.
first.
We
5.
skipped 5.
Yes. Yes. Did we do 3? Did we do number 3?
Yes,
The
we
procedure?
did.
Okay.
Yes, we did. Yes.
Thank
The
you.
one that we're just missing is just 5. And then we'll go ahead and address that. And then we can go back to public comment if that sounds good.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, Jim, do you want to take the lead? Jim, do you want to take the lead on this, or would you like me to try to get something going? Can he hear me?
We do have public comment.
No, we need to set the meetings for April and May first before we
Yes.
move on to public comment.
Okay.
Okay. Do we want to still meet every other week through April and May?
Yeah, I
Or
think
is that
every
getting?
Yes.
every other week is doing really well.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
okay.
agree.
All right. Because if we're not moving along, we're going to have to meet more frequent as our deadline approaches. So just
Mhm.
to drop that out there.
Then I
Um,
recommend that we just set April right now
Yes.
and see how we go through April before we start, and then look at May after that.
What do you think, Megan?
We can do that. We can defer that to a later meeting. What meeting would we like to do that? Do you think we should do whatever the first meeting of April will be? Do you think that would be a good idea?
I think that would be great.
And we could set the
Yes.
May dates then. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's figure out for April what the first meeting date is. So we are meeting Wednesdays.
April 2nd.
That would
Yes,
be
April
2
2nd.
weeks in a row. Aren't we meeting March 26th?
We
Ye-
pushed the
yes.
March one back because of spring break in the
Yeah.
area. So
Right.
that was bumped.
Yeah.
So then we would have April 9th
April
and then
9th.
April 23rd would be
Yes.
the next 2 meetings. Okay.
I agree with that.
Okay. And would we like to do the 9th as I know we're doing an afternoon meeting still. Are we still wanting to do that, an afternoon and an evening meeting?
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so do we want to do that one as a afternoon meeting, or would we like to do that, get that one the evening meeting? Get that out of the way.
Date was that, please?
That was going to be April 9th.
April 9th, you're asking either early or late,
Yes.
AM, PM? Okay. Question, we need to have some public input here shortly. Is it too soon to do that in April? If we do an April 9th PM meeting, is that public input?
And
I say the
before-
sooner the better. I agree with you, Connie. I think the sooner the better.
Okay.
I think, well,
And the city
again,
media
I'm-
channels will blast that out?
So April 9, 11 to 1.
So I think that's what we're talking
No,
about now.
a
I think
night
we're talking
meeting.
about
6 to
No.
8.
Yeah.
Okay.
6 to 8 for the April 9th meeting.
The
Okay.
23rd is
So-
11 to 1.
So we are switching those. So usually the first meeting of the month is the afternoon and the last one is the evening. For April, we're going to switch those. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah,
Yes.
to give time for people, if they want to bring public comment, they can come to that one.
Okay, so. And I'm not sure, do we need to vote on that?
I think that would be
Motion?
safe.
We'll have
Yes.
a motion there in a second, but what about the second meeting in April?
I think we're,
11 to 1.
okay,
May
so
I,
we're,
Chair, may I speak? I do want to say when we're advertising this, I think it was specified at the first meeting that at the end of every meeting, you're going to open for public comment. And we are going to advertise that the first meeting of each month is during the day and the second one is in the evening. So I do think if you switch that up, that might cause extra confusion.
Oh, okay. That makes
Point.
sense.
point.
So yeah, we did, when we started talking about meeting dates, we were always going to have a PM meeting. That way it allows more people
Okay,
in
we'll flip
after
them.
work.
Okay.
Okay, so
Sounds-
April 9th, we're gonna do the afternoon meeting, correct? So we're gonna do
11 to
11 to
1.
1, April 9th. Perfect. And then April 23rd, then we're gonna do the 6 to 8. Does that sound good? Okay. All right. Well, do
Thanks,
we
Dan.
have? Yes, thank you, Dan.
Is there any possibility of moving the 23rd to the 22nd?
That would depend on if the room is available.
So the 22nd is actually we have the city, oh wait, hold on one second.
So the
That might be
22nd will
city
the fourth
council.
I
Tuesday.
think it is the last meeting of the month, or last Tuesday of the month, so there should not be
Yeah, there isn't.
a council meeting that week.
Okay.
So do we want to try to do Tuesday? Dan, I'm sorry. Do you happen to know how we can check to see if this room is available?
I was trying to do it. I can't do it on my laptop right now, but
Okay.
I think if we plan it this far out, the room should be available, and I can let you know the next time if there is a conflict already. But I will
Committee
try to
members,
reserve.
does anybody have a conflict on that date?
Why are we trying to change this? Why are we not? I mean, why come we can't keep the continuity? Why are we changing from Wednesday to Tuesday on this one?
I was trying to.
I'm sorry, Champagne, say that again.
But I think if we plan it this far out, the room should be available, and I can let you know the next time if there is a conflict already.
Committee members, does anybody have a conflict on that date?
Why?
Jane, I think your mic is on and it's
Echo
echoing.
going on,
Why are we not? I mean, why can't we keep the continuity? Why are we changing from Wednesday to Tuesday on this one?
Okay, there we go.
Playback.
Okay.
So the question was from Champagne is, why are we looking
Yes.
at changing the Wednesday to a Tuesday?
Hey there.
Yes. And Jim had mentioned that. So Jim, are you not available on the
Right,
23rd
I have
of
a
April?
conflict on Wednesday, the 23rd in the evening, and I would not be able to attend.
Okay. Okay.
If
So,
that creates a problem to change for Tuesday, then you all can proceed without me.
okay.
But I can't get out of the 23rd.
Okay. So what are we thinking on input from everybody else? Are we wanting to stay on the 23rd? Does that work better for everybody else?
Both work for me.
Both days work for me.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm available.
Okay. Champagne, are you available or?
I'm available. I was just
Okay.
wondering why the change, and I just don't want to confuse people. I just
Absolutely.
don't, but that was my thought. I don't have a
Yeah.
conflict. Unless
Okay.
we have to do Zoom and I can't get in like tonight and have to call on Facebook.
Right.
But,
I know.
other than
I'm
that,
sorry
yeah.
about that.
But
by
other
the
than
way.
that, I'm good. I really do. If that's what we're pushing, we're promoting, we're going to be a thought of Wednesday. I was just wondering why we are going to change it to a Tuesday. Might add some confusion, but I can make it.
Okay. So I think I do kind of agree with Champagne on that. I don't know if I really should speak on it. Sorry, guys, I'm fairly new here. But I mean, if we're worried about these earlier meetings and confusing people with switching up the Wednesday dates, if we want to stick with the 23rd, and unfortunately Jim would not be able to attend, at least for the earlier meeting dates, I think that would be beneficial for it to stop with the confusion. So if we want to go ahead and keep it on the 23rd, I don't think that it would be a bad idea. But of course, like Jim said, he would not be able to attend. So of course, it is up to you guys.
I make a motion that we keep it on the 23rd.
Okay. Anybody second the motion?
Second.
Okay. Okay, so we are going to vote now. April 9th will be the first meeting, and that will be 11 to 1. And then April 23rd will be the second meeting of April, and that will be from 6 to 8. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do we want to do voice vote, or would we like to do roll call? Or I go through or roll call vote, sorry.
Voice
So we
vote
could
should
look
be
at some
fine.
May dates now.
Yes, okay, all right. If we want to go ahead and take a voice vote, I think that'd be great. Okay, so everybody in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Nobody opposed. Okay.
All right. So we
Yeah,
have
that's how
6
it's
and
going.
that will carry. Okay. And then, so we wanted to go ahead and wait on the May date, the May calendar dates. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we will have to defer that then to the first meeting of March. Do we want to do that and talk about it then? Or sorry, or the first meeting of April, we wanted to talk about the May dates. Does that sound correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So then do we want to do a vote on that as well? Should we do a vote on that?
Fine.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. Okay. So we are now voting that April 9th, we are going to be moving the meeting dates or setting the meeting dates for May to the first meeting of April, which will be April 9th. Do I have anybody that will move to a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, perfect. All right. And do we want to do another voice vote? Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, perfect. Okay. All right. So we have 6 yes, and that motion will carry. So we will defer the May meeting dates to April 9th. That we will decide then. Does that sound like a plan?
And before we go on, I apologize, everybody. Just Megan, for the record and for minutes, because I'm an alternate member, I don't vote, so that's a 5 instead of 6
thank you.
votes.
Thank you, Zach. I
want to
greatly
make sure that
appreciate
nobody looks
that.
at the minutes and asks why the alternate member started voting all of a sudden. So.
I appreciate that, Zach. Thank you for clarifying that for me. Okay.
But Megan, I
Yes.
think just for records, I believe Champagne may have joined and she wasn't in the present in the very beginning when we did roll call, correct?
He was not. So what do I need to do there? I'm sorry.
I only took one vote at the very beginning when Champagne wasn't here, and then when she arrived, I stopped voting.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Sure.
Randy, is that okay? Do I need to do anything there?
I think that's fine. I think we just need to have some record as to what's going on.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you guys for your patience with this. Okay. All right. Jim, do you want to go to item 8? Does anybody have any other business or anything?
7. We
Item
need to
7.
talk
Oh,
about
Jen.
if there's any general
Thank you.
public comment.
We did not have anybody that did sign up this evening, so we are good
Okay, so
there.
nothing.
No.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then I guess, Chair, if you want to move on to agenda number 8, if there's any other business.
That's you, Jim.
Very done. That completes the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Did
Move
anyone
to
have any
adjourn.
other business? Was there any?
Moved.
staff or anything like that? Did we have anything for other business that you guys needed to cover?
No, I don't have anything else.
Okay.
Can I ask, my Zoom links, and it was different when he sent it again. Who sends the Zoom link? Because I couldn't get in. I was trying for 20 minutes and I finally
Oh, my.
went on the Facebook and was able to send a message in and got the link resent. So who sends that?
Jane handles that.
Yeah, Jane
Okay,
sends everything.
Okay, because mine said that the meeting was already in progress at 5:50 and it never let, and so I'm like, okay, yeah.
I just used my Zoom link that was in my calendar invite. I just went to my calendar and clicked it
Yeah.
and it let me in.
I was just,
Mhm.
okay.
And it alerts you when the meeting starts, just when they open up the Zoom for the first time.
Mhm.
It gives you an alert that says, hey, people are starting to join the Zoom.
Okay, any other comments? Anything else, folks?
No,
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you all. I'll see you at the next meeting.
All right.
Hey.
Bye, all.
Thank you guys. Be
Bye.
safe. Thank you.